September 15, 1940, 11:47 a.m. 23-year-old Hauptmann Klaus Brennerhoff adjusted his oxygen mask as his Messerschmitt Bf 109E3 sliced through the morning sky at 24,000 feet above the English Channel. The veteran pilot from Nuremberg had flown 67 combat missions over Britain, and today felt different. His squadron of 12 aircraft approached what intelligence promised would be another routine bombing escort mission to London. Brennerhoff expected the usual pattern: British fighters appearing seemingly at random, engaging in brief dogfights, then melting away into the vast English countryside. What he witnessed in the next 17 minutes defied everything he had been taught about aerial warfare. Instead of scattered, confused British defenders, perfectly coordinated Hurricane and Spitfire squadrons materialized from precise vectors, attacking with surgical timing that seemed impossible. The metallic taste of fear filled his mouth as tracer rounds whistled past his canopy. Brennerhoff understood with crystalline clarity that the enemy somehow knew exactly where his formation was, what altitude they flew, and precisely when they would arrive. This moment would shatter his confidence in German air superiority forever. Before we explore how this revelation changed everything for these experienced pilots, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. We love hearing from viewers around the world who are fascinated by these untold stories of human discovery during the Second World War. The story begins 18 months earlier, when Brennerhoff first joined Jagdgeschwader 26, one of the Luftwaffe's elite fighter wings. Born in 1917 to a family of Bavarian clockmakers, Klaus had grown up believing in precision, mechanical excellence, and German engineering superiority. His father, Wilhelm Brennerhoff, had served as an artillery observer during the Great War, instilling in young Klaus the importance of accurate intelligence and tactical surprise. At flight school in 1938, instructors emphasized that German pilots possessed superior training, aircraft, and tactical doctrine. They would dominate European skies through skill, courage, and technological advancement. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 represented the pinnacle of fighter design, faster and more heavily armed than anything the British could field. Intelligence briefings consistently portrayed the Royal Air Force as disorganized, poorly equipped, and demoralized by months of bombing. During his first missions over Britain in August 1940, Brennerhoff experienced the confidence that comes from numerical superiority and tactical initiative. German formations crossed the Channel unopposed, struck their targets, and returned home with minimal losses. British fighters appeared sporadically, engaging in brief, inconclusive combats before disappearing. Everything matched expectations perfectly. The enemy seemed reactive, defensive, and fundamentally outclassed by German tactical innovation. Luftwaffe commanders spoke confidently of achieving air superiority within weeks, clearing the way for Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of Britain. Combat reports described confused British responses, ineffective interceptions, and rapidly dwindling enemy fighter strength. However, something began to change during the first week of September. British interceptions became more frequent and better coordinated. Enemy fighters appeared with suspicious regularity exactly where German formations were most vulnerable during bombing runs. Instead of random encounters, these encounters felt planned, deliberate, and devastatingly effective. Brennerhoff noticed that British pilots seemed to know German approach routes, attack formations, and even individual aircraft capabilities. The tactical advantage that had defined early Luftwaffe success was somehow slipping away, replaced by an unsettling sense that the enemy possessed information that should have been impossible to obtain. September 7th marked the beginning of what British historians would later call the London Blitz, but for German aircrews, it represented something far more disturbing. During a massive daylight raid involving over 300 bombers and 600 fighters, Brennerhoff witnessed British defenders responding with precision that defied explanation. Hurricane squadrons appeared at exactly the right altitude and angle to intercept German formations before they reached their targets. Spitfire units materialized from seemingly empty sky, attacking with tactical coordination that suggested detailed advance planning. Most unsettling of all, British pilots seemed to anticipate German evasive maneuvers, positioning themselves to exploit weaknesses in German defensive formations. The revelation came gradually through accumulated evidence that challenged everything Brennerhoff thought he understood about aerial warfare. During a September 11th mission to bomb aircraft factories near Southampton, his squadron encountered what appeared to be impossible tactical prescience from British defenders. As the German formation approached the English coast at 22,000 feet, Brennerhoff observed through his canopy something that made his blood run cold. British fighter squadrons were already climbing to intercept positions, not scrambling from airfields in response to the German approach, but pre-positioned as if they had known the exact timing and route of the attack hours in advance. Obergefreiter Hans Steinberger, Brennerhoff's wingman and childhood friend from Nuremberg, later recorded in his flight log, "The English fighters were waiting for us like hunters at a waterhole. They knew we were coming before we knew ourselves." This wasn't the disorganized, reactive defense that intelligence briefings had promised. Instead, British pilots demonstrated tactical awareness that suggested access to German operational planning at the highest levels. The implications terrified experienced aircrews who had built their confidence on superior German intelligence and operational security. What Brennerhoff discovered was that the British had developed something called radio direction finding, later known as radar, a revolutionary technology that could detect aircraft formations from distances exceeding 100 miles. While German engineers had experimented with similar concepts, they had dismissed radio wave detection as impractical for real-time fighter direction. British scientists, working under desperate wartime pressure, had not only perfected the technology, but had constructed a network of radar stations along the English coast that provided comprehensive coverage of all German approach routes. The technical specifications were staggering. British chain-home radar stations could detect aircraft formations at altitudes up to 30,000 feet from ranges exceeding 120 miles. More importantly, they could determine aircraft heading, approximate numbers, and estimated altitude with accuracy sufficient for tactical fighter direction. While German formations flew across the channel believing they possessed the element of surprise, British radar operators were tracking their movements from takeoff, calculating interception vectors, and directing fighter squadrons to optimal attack positions. By September 15th, the day of Brennerhoff's most shocking encounter, the British radar network had achieved something unprecedented in military history: the complete elimination of tactical surprise for attacking air formations. Every German bomber and fighter crossing the English Channel appeared on British radar screens as distinct contacts, tracked continuously until they either engaged British fighters or returned to base. Fighter command controllers could vector defending squadrons with mathematical precision, ensuring that British pilots engaged German formations at optimal altitudes and angles for maximum effectiveness. The human impact of this technological revolution was immediate and devastating for German aircrews. Brennerhoff later wrote in a letter to his sister Maria, "We fly into England expecting to find scattered, confused defenders. Instead, we encounter perfectly coordinated resistance that knows our every move before we make it. It's like fighting an opponent who can read your thoughts." This psychological shock proved as damaging as the tactical disadvantage. Experienced pilots who had dominated European skies found themselves outmaneuvered by an enemy they had been taught to consider technically inferior. Perhaps most devastating was the realization that German intelligence had completely misunderstood British defensive capabilities. While Luftwaffe briefings described a demoralized enemy relying on outdated tactics and inferior equipment, the reality revealed a highly sophisticated defense system that represented the most advanced military technology in the world. British radar operators, many of them young women with no previous military experience, were defeating veteran German pilots through superior information and tactical coordination. The statistical evidence became overwhelming by mid-September. During the massive September 15th raids, German formations lost 60 aircraft while shooting down only 26 British fighters. More significantly, British pilots consistently engaged German formations at optimal tactical positions, suggesting advanced knowledge of German attack plans. Loss rates for German bombers increased from 2% in early August to over 8% by late September, making daylight bombing operations unsustainable. Brennerhoff's personal transformation reflected the broader psychological impact on German aircrews. A confident, experienced pilot who had begun the Battle of Britain believing in German technological superiority found himself questioning fundamental assumptions about warfare, intelligence, and national capability. The enemy possessed technology that German engineers had dismissed as impossible, operated by personnel who demonstrated tactical excellence that challenged every stereotype about British military competence. The tipping point came during what British historians later called Battle of Britain Day, September 15, 1940, when Brennerhoff experienced the full devastating impact of radar-directed fighter interception. Leading a formation of 8 Messerschmitt Bf-109s escorting Dornier Do-217 bombers toward London, he noticed British fighters climbing to intercept positions while his formation was still 40 miles from the English coast. This was tactically impossible, according to everything German intelligence had taught about British defensive capabilities. As his formation crossed the Thames estuary at 25,000 feet, Brennerhoff witnessed something that challenged his understanding of physics itself. British Spitfire squadrons appeared from 3 different directions simultaneously, attacking with coordination that required precise timing and advanced planning. These weren't random interceptions by scattered defensive patrols. Instead, British pilots executed a complex tactical maneuver that positioned them perfectly to exploit weaknesses in German bomber formations. This cannot be the same Royal Air Force we were told about 6 months ago, Brennerhoff radioed to his squadron leader, Major Friedrich Kemmerich. The response came through heavy static. "Klaus, they're tracking us somehow. Every move we make, they anticipate. It's like they have eyes we cannot see." This moment of recognition transformed both pilots' understanding of the strategic situation. The enemy possessed technological capabilities that German intelligence had either misunderstood or completely overlooked. What happened next surprised everyone, including British radar operators monitoring the engagement from underground bunkers along the English coast. As German formations attempted to evade British interceptions through rapid altitude changes and course corrections, British fighters adjusted their attack vectors with precision that seemed supernatural. Every German tactical maneuver was countered by perfectly positioned British defensive responses, suggesting real-time intelligence gathering of impossible accuracy and sophistication. The technology behind this tactical revolution was chain-home radar, a network of 21 transmitting stations and 30 receiving stations that provided complete coverage of British airspace from Scotland to Cornwall. Each station transmitted radio pulses at 20 to 30 MHz frequency, detecting reflected signals from aircraft metal surfaces at distances up to 200 kilometers. More importantly, the system included sophisticated plotting rooms where trained operators converted raw radar data into tactical intelligence for fighter direction. In underground operations rooms across southern England, teams of primarily female radar operators tracked German formations with mechanical precision that surpassed anything German intelligence had imagined possible. These young women, many recruited from civilian occupations with no previous military experience, were defeating veteran Luftwaffe pilots through superior technology and tactical coordination. The psychological impact on German aircrews was devastating and immediate. Flight Sergeant Dorothy Steinbach, a 22-year-old former telephone operator from Manchester, later described her experience tracking German formations. We could see them coming from France, watch them form up over Calais, follow their exact route across the channel. By the time they reached our coast, we had calculated everything: their altitude, speed, probable targets, and optimal interception points. Our pilots were waiting for them like chess masters who had seen their opponent's next 5 moves. The disparity was staggering. While German pilots flew believing they possessed tactical surprise, British defenders tracked their every movement from takeoff to landing. German formations crossing the channel appeared on British radar screens as distinct contacts with specific identifying characteristics. Radar operators could distinguish between different aircraft types, estimate formation sizes, and predict target destinations with accuracy that eliminated any possibility of strategic or tactical surprise. By late September, the situation had evolved into something unprecedented in military aviation history. German daylight bombing operations, which had begun with expectations of rapid victory, were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that possessed complete situational awareness of all German air operations. Loss rates for German bombers reached unsustainable levels, forcing Luftwaffe commanders to abandon daylight operations in favor of night bombing campaigns. The real shock came when Brennerhoff and surviving German pilots realized that British radar technology represented just one component of an integrated defense system that included fighter direction, early warning networks, and tactical coordination capabilities that surpassed anything in German military doctrine. While German engineers had focused on individual aircraft performance and pilot training, British scientists had created a technological system that made individual pilot skill nearly irrelevant to tactical outcomes. Lieutenant Colonel Wolfgang Schneidewind, Brennerhoff's group commander, summarized the situation in a September 20th operations report. Enemy defensive capabilities exceed our most optimistic intelligence estimates. They possess technology that makes surprise impossible, and coordination that makes our tactical doctrine obsolete. We are not fighting the Royal Air Force described in our briefings. We are fighting an opponent that represents military technology beyond our current understanding. The aftermath of these revelations transformed not just individual pilots like Brennerhoff, but the entire strategic calculation of the war in Western Europe. During October 1940, as German daylight bombing operations became increasingly unsustainable, Luftwaffe intelligence began investigating how British defenders had achieved such devastating tactical superiority. The investigation revealed technological capabilities that challenged fundamental German assumptions about British scientific and industrial capacity.
German radar development, led by scientists an Telefunken und Lorenz Companies, hatte produziert funktionale Radarsysteme bis 1938. Aber German Ingenieure hatten Fokus auf navale Anwendungen und Anti-Aircraft Gun Direction, dismissing die Possibility von Radar für Fighter Interception als technisch unpraktikabel. Dr. Rudolf Kühnhold, Direktor von German Radar Research, hatte konkludiert, dass Radiowellendetection leckt die Akkuratät und Reliabilität notwendig für effektive Air Defense Operationen. Dies technische Missfallkalkül prüfte strategisch katastrophal. British Radar Development folgte einem komplett anderen Pfad, getrieben von desperater Erweiterung von German Bomber Capabilities und der geografische Vulnerabilität der britischen Isle. Startend in 1935, Robert Watson Watt und sein Team an der Radio Research Station hatten spezifisch auf Aircraft Detection und Fighter Direction Applikationen fokussiert. Bei 1940 British Chain Home Radar hatte erzielt technische Spezifikationen, die German Scientists für unmöglich hielten. Akkurate Aircraft Detection auf Reichweiten über 100 Meilen mit so viel Präzision für taktische Fighterkontrolle. Die komparate Statistiken revelierten die Magnitude der German Intelligenzfehler. Während Deutschland etwa 15 operationelle Radarstationen bis September 1940 aufgebaut hatte, primär für navale und Küstenverteidigung, Britannien hatte über 50 Radarstationen speziell für Air Defense Koordination entwickelt. More significantly, British radar operators processed incoming data durch sophistizierte Plotting-Systeme, das Raw-Detection-Information in Minuten als aktionable taktische Intelligenz prüften. Brennerhoffs persönliche Reise von Confidence zu Disillusionierung reflektierte breitere Veränderungen in German Military Culture in dieser Zeit. In Lettern an seine Familie während Oktober 1940 hat er eine Transformation von absoluter Faith in German technologischer Superiorität zu großer Erkenntnis, dass der Ender Capabilities besitzt, die German Propaganda als unmöglich erwiesen hatte. Everything we believed about British industrial capacity was wrong, er schrieb zu seinem Vater am 15. Oktober. They have built something we thought could not be built, operated by people we thought could not operate it. The human cost of this technological shock wurde nicht nur in Aircraft Losses gemessen, sondern in der psychischen Transformation erfahrener Aircrews, die die Kampagne erwartet hatten, rapide Sieg zu bringen. German Pilots, die in polnisch- und französischen Luften dominiert hatten, fanden sich systematisch ausmanövriert von britischen Verteidigern, die scheinbar supernatürliche Arbeit von German taktischen Intentionen hatten. Combat Stress Casualties stiegen dramatisch an, als Veterane Aircrews Schwierigkeiten hatten, einen taktischen Umfeld zu adaptieren, das deren Training und Erfahrung widersprach. Perhaps most devastating war die Erkenntnis, dass German Intelligenz komplett die Natur der britischen Verteidigungsvorbereitungen missverstanden hatte. Während Luftwaffe-Briefings einen demoralisierten Gegner auf obsolete Geräte und improvisierte Taktiken beriefen, die Realität revealierte ein sophistiziertes Verteidigungssystem, das das avancierteste Militärtechnologie der Welt darstellte. British Radar Operators, prädominant junge Frauen, rekrutiert aus zivilen Aufgaben, werteten deutsche Aces durch superiore Information und taktische Koordination. Die breiteren Implikationen erstreckten weit über den immediaten taktischen Situationen. German Military Doctrine basiert auf rapide Offensivoperationen, die Sieg durch Überraschung und superiore Training erreichten, prüfte unadäquat gegen einen Ender, der komplette situationale Arbeit von German Operationen hatte. Die fundamentale Annahme unter Lion German taktischer Erfolg in Polen und Franz, dass der Ender überrascht und überwältigt werden konnte, bevor effektive Widerstand entstehen konnte, wurde obsolet durch britische technologische Capabilities.
By November 1940, Brennerhoff had been transferred to night fighter operations, acknowledging that German daylight bombing had become strategically impossible against British radar-directed defenses. His final daylight mission over Britain on October 28th reinforced the completeness of German tactical defeat. British fighters intercepted his formation with precision that eliminated any possibility of surprise, engaging German aircraft at optimal tactical positions that maximized British advantages while exploiting German vulnerabilities. The long-term consequences of this technological revelation extended throughout German military planning for the remainder of the war. Recognition that the enemy possessed advanced radar capabilities forced German commanders to acknowledge that surprise, the foundation of German tactical doctrine, was no longer achievable against technologically sophisticated opponents. This realization would influence German strategic thinking during subsequent operations in the Soviet Union, North Africa, and Italy. Oberst Hans Friedrich Steinfeld, Brennerhoff's wing commander, captured the broader significance of this technological shock in his post-war memoir. We discovered that we were fighting not just British pilots, but British scientists and engineers who had created military technology that made our tactical doctrine obsolete. The young women operating radar stations had defeated our most experienced pilots not through superior flying skills, but through superior information. We were fighting the future with methods from the past. The statistical evidence of German defeat became undeniable by December 1940. German bomber losses during daylight operations exceeded 15% per mission, making continued operations impossible. More significantly, British fighter losses decreased throughout the battle as radar-directed interceptions became more sophisticated and effective.
Years later, Klaus Brennerhoff would reflect on his transformation from confident Luftwaffe pilot to reluctant witness of German technological defeat with the wisdom that comes from surviving a war that redefined military science. After being shot down over Kent in March 1941 during a night bombing mission, Brennerhoff spent 4 years as a prisoner of war, during which British interrogators revealed the full scope of radar technology that had defeated German air operations. The experience taught him that military superiority depends not just on courage and training, but on scientific innovation and industrial capacity that transforms tactical possibilities. Following repatriation in 1945, Brennerhoff returned to Nuremberg to find his family's clockmaking business destroyed by Allied bombing, a bitter irony that symbolized how the war had reversed the relationship between German and British technological capabilities. His father Wilhelm had died during a 1944 air raid, never understanding how German air superiority had collapsed so completely. Rebuilding their workshop with mechanical precision inherited through generations of German craftsmanship, Klaus gradually recognized that the radar technology that had defeated him represented the same dedication to technical excellence that his family had applied to clockmaking for over 2 centuries. The radar revelation had taught fundamental lessons about technological warfare that extended far beyond the immediate tactical defeat of German air operations. British success demonstrated that scientific innovation, properly applied to military requirements, could overcome numerical and qualitative superiority in traditional military capabilities. More importantly, it revealed that underestimating enemy technological capacity could produce strategic disasters that no amount of individual courage or tactical skill could overcome. In 1947, while testifying before Allied intelligence committees investigating German radar development, Brennerhoff learned the complete scope of British chain-home operations. The network that had defeated German air attacks included not just radar stations, but sophisticated communication systems, plotting rooms, and fighter direction capabilities that represented integrated technological innovation beyond anything German scientists had imagined possible. British radar operators had tracked over 50,000 German aircraft sorties with accuracy that provided tactical intelligence unprecedented in military history. The comparative development revealed fundamental differences in scientific approach between German and British radar research. German engineers had focused on individual technical components, developing excellent radar equipment for specific applications without considering broader tactical integration. British scientists had approached radar as a complete system, designing equipment, procedures, and personnel training as integrated components of a comprehensive air defense network. This systems approach produced technological capabilities that exceeded the sum of individual technical achievements. Perhaps most remarkable was the human element of British radar success. The young women who operated chain home stations, many without previous technical experience, had been trained to process complex information and make tactical decisions that defeated veteran German pilots. Dorothy Steinbach, the Manchester telephone operator who had tracked Brennerhoff's formations, later explained, "We understood that every contact on our radar screens represented young men risking their lives. That knowledge made us incredibly careful about accuracy. German pilots were skilled and brave, but they were fighting against information they couldn't see and technology they didn't understand." The broader historical significance of radar technology extended throughout subsequent military development during and after World War II. Recognition that radio wave detection could provide comprehensive situational awareness transformed naval warfare, ground combat, and strategic bombing operations. German attempts to develop effective radar countermeasures during 1943 and 1944 proved largely unsuccessful because they approached radar as a technical problem rather than a complete tactical system. For Brennerhoff, the personal impact of encountering superior enemy technology created a lifelong fascination with the relationship between scientific innovation and military capability.
During the 1950s, while rebuilding his family's clockmaking business, he corresponded with several British radar operators, developing friendships with former enemies based on mutual respect for technical excellence and professional competence. These relationships helped him understand that technological superiority depends not just on individual brilliance, but on institutional commitment to scientific education and industrial development. The psychological transformation proved as significant as the tactical defeat. German pilots who had begun the Battle of Britain expecting rapid victory based on superior aircraft and training discovered that technological innovation could render traditional military advantages obsolete virtually overnight. This lesson influenced post-war German military doctrine, which emphasized technological adaptation and scientific intelligence as essential components of military effectiveness. In his 1967 memoir, Radar Schatten, Radar Shadows, Brennerhoff wrote, "We flew into British airspace believing we possessed every advantage except numbers. We discovered that British scientists had created technological capabilities that made our advantages irrelevant. The radar operators who defeated us were not superior pilots or better soldiers. They were young people armed with superior information, which proved more decisive than superior aircraft or superior training." The symbolic significance of radar technology extended beyond its immediate military applications. For Brennerhoff and thousands of other German aircrews, radar represented the moment when traditional concepts of military superiority became obsolete. The invisible electronic eyes that tracked German formations across the Channel represented a new kind of warfare where scientific innovation proved more decisive than individual heroism or tactical skill. The chain of events that began with Brennerhoff's September 15th shock over the English Channel ultimately contributed to German recognition that technological warfare required different strategic approaches than traditional military operations. The lesson was both humbling and revelatory, that military superiority in the modern age depends not just on courage and skill, but on scientific understanding and industrial capacity that transforms the fundamental nature of combat itself. For German airmen like Klaus Brennerhoff, the lesson resonated throughout their lives as a reminder that in technological warfare, the most dangerous enemy is often the one you cannot see. The technical specifications that Brennerhoff learned during his captivity revealed the staggering scope of British radar development that had remained hidden from German intelligence throughout 1940. Chain home stations transmitted 350 kilowatt radio pulses every few seconds, creating an electronic curtain that detected metal aircraft at ranges German engineers had considered theoretically impossible. Each pulse traveled at the speed of light to aircraft targets and returned as reflected echoes that radar operators interpreted with mathematical precision that surpassed mechanical fire control systems. More disturbing was the revelation that British radar development had begun in earnest during 1935, giving British scientists a 5-year technological advantage that German intelligence had completely failed to detect. While German radar research focused on naval applications and anti-aircraft gun direction, British scientists had concentrated exclusively on fighter interception capabilities, developing specialized plotting techniques and communication systems that transformed raw radar data into tactical fighter direction within minutes of initial aircraft detection. The industrial capacity required for chain home construction revealed another dimension of German intelligence failure that extended far beyond radar technology itself. British engineers had manufactured and installed over 240 massive steel antenna towers, each over 300 feet tall, along with sophisticated transmitting equipment, receiving stations, and underground operations centers that represented industrial commitment exceeding anything German planners had anticipated. This construction occurred simultaneously with British aircraft production increases that had also escaped German intelligence attention.
During interrogation sessions at prisoner of war camps, Brennerhoff discovered that British radar operators had tracked his specific aircraft on multiple occasions, identifying individual German pilots by their tactical flying patterns and aircraft markings visible on radar screens. Flight Officer Margaret Kempenfield, a 19-year-old radar operator from Yorkshire, had personally tracked Brennerhoff's September 15th mission from French airspace to London, calculating intercept vectors that positioned British fighters for optimal tactical engagement. The psychological impact of learning these details proved as devastating as the original tactical defeat. Brennerhoff realized that German pilots had flown dozens of missions believing they possessed tactical surprise, while British defenders had tracked their every movement with electronic precision that rendered German tactical doctrine completely obsolete. Every evasive maneuver, every formation change, every attempt at tactical deception had been observed and analyzed by radar operators who possessed complete situational awareness. The broader strategic implications extended throughout German military planning as radar technology proliferated to other Allied nations during 1941 and 1942.
American development of airborne radar systems eliminated German submarine advantages in the Atlantic, while Soviet adaptation of British radar technology contributed to improved air defense around Moscow and Leningrad. German recognition that technological surprise had become impossible against radar-equipped opponents forced fundamental changes in military doctrine that emphasized deception, electronic countermeasures, and technological development over traditional tactical superiority. Brennerhoff's post-war correspondence with British radar operators revealed additional dimensions of technological warfare that challenged his understanding of military effectiveness. Dorothy Steinbach described the emotional pressure of tracking German formations while understanding that successful interceptions meant young German pilots would be shot down or killed. This human element of radar warfare had been invisible to German pilots who experienced only the tactical consequences of superior British information. The economic dimensions of radar development proved equally revealing. British investment in chain-home radar totaled approximately £10 million between 1936 and 1940, representing less than 2% of total British military expenditure during this period. This relatively modest investment produced technological capabilities that neutralized German air superiority achieved through decades of aircraft development and pilot training, costing hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks. The cost-effectiveness ratio demonstrated that scientific innovation could produce military advantages far exceeding traditional approaches to military capability development. During the 1960s, as Brennerhoff's clockmaking business prospered in rebuilt Nuremberg, he reflected on parallels between precision mechanical engineering and radar technology that had defeated German air operations. Both required meticulous attention to technical specifications, precise manufacturing tolerances, and systematic testing procedures that German engineering traditions had emphasized for centuries. The tragedy was that German radar scientists possessed the technical competence necessary for chain-home development, but had focused their efforts on applications that proved tactically irrelevant. The international implications of radar technology extended throughout subsequent decades as electronic warfare became fundamental to military operations worldwide. Brennerhoff's son, Heinrich, born in 1948, pursued electrical engineering studies that included radar principles originally developed to defeat his father's air operations. This generational transition from mechanical precision to electronic sophistication represented broader technological changes that transformed military capabilities throughout the Cold War period. The relationship between individual skill and technological systems remained a central theme in Brennerhoff's understanding of his wartime experience. German pilot training had emphasized individual excellence, tactical innovation, and aircraft performance characteristics that proved inadequate against systematic technological advantages. British radar success demonstrated that properly organized technological systems could overcome individual superiority through information advantages that transformed the fundamental nature of aerial combat. The memorial significance of radar technology for Brennerhoff and surviving German aircrews evolved throughout subsequent decades, as they recognized that their defeat had contributed to technological development that influenced military aviation worldwide. Modern air traffic control systems, weather radar, and civilian navigation technologies all descended from wartime radar development that had originally been designed to defeat German air operations over Britain. In his final years, Klaus Brennerhoff established a small museum in Nuremberg dedicated to the technological history of aerial warfare, including displays that explained British chain-home radar operations with technical accuracy that honored both German and British engineering achievements. Visitors could examine radar equipment, plotting tables, and communication systems that demonstrated how scientific innovation had transformed military capabilities during World War II. The legacy represented more than historical curiosity. It embodied recognition that technological warfare requires continuous scientific development and international cooperation that transcends national boundaries. The young British women who had operated radar stations to defeat German air operations had contributed to technological advancement that ultimately benefited aviation safety and navigation capabilities worldwide. The philosophical implications resonated throughout Brennerhoff's later life, as he recognized that military technology serves broader human purposes beyond immediate tactical applications. Radar development that had defeated German bombers over London contributed to civilian aviation safety, weather forecasting, and scientific research that improved human welfare in ways that military planners had never anticipated. The transformation from confident Luftwaffe pilot to humble witness of technological progress represented personal growth that extended beyond military defeat to embrace appreciation for human scientific achievement regardless of national origin. For Klaus Brennerhoff, the radar shadows that had tracked his aircraft over Britain ultimately illuminated the possibility that technological innovation could serve human progress rather than human destruction.